I don't take supplements. I never have. And look, I'm not saying that to seem different or to invalidate those who do. I'm saying it because for years I believed memory was a matter of age, genetics, and stress. Until I began to understand that the brain follows a very specific nutritional logic during sleep, and that 4 common, inexpensive foods that most people already have at home act directly on the mechanisms the brain uses to consolidate memory, repair neurons, and release the right neurotransmitters during the deepest stages of sleep. Before we continue, if you truly want to protect your memory against diseases like Alzheimer's or any other neurodegenerative condition, comment below. I will protect my memory. It shows that you are committed to your health. I want to know where this content is reaching. Tell me your city and state. Let's start with peanuts. And I need you to forget for a moment everything you've heard about them. The debate about fat, calories, peanut butter, dieting. Forget all of that. I'm going to tell you about an aspect that is rarely discussed when it comes to brain health. Peanuts are one of the most accessible sources of resveratrol available. And resveratrol is not just any nutrient for the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is the protective barrier between the bloodstream and brain tissue. And once inside the brain, it activates a protein called SIRT1. This protein directly regulates the neuronal repair process that takes place during sleep. It is involved in the elimination of damaged cells, the protection of neurons against oxidative stress, and the regulation of sleep-wake cycles at the cellular level. But resveratrol does not work alone. Peanuts are also rich in niacin, which is vitamin B3, and niacin is essential for the production of NAD+, a coenzyme that fuels neuronal DNA repair processes during sleep. Without enough NAD+, neurons cannot complete their repair cycles, and you wake up with that feeling that your brain never truly rested, even if you slept for 8 hours. There is also a third mechanism that peanuts activate in the context of sleep. They contain tryptophan, which is the precursor to serotonin, which in turn is the precursor to melatonin. But here is the point that most people overlook. Not just any amount of tryptophan will make this conversion happen efficiently. It depends on the simultaneous presence of vitamin B6 and magnesium, and peanuts provide a meaningful amount of vitamin B6, creating a more favorable environment in the body for this conversion chain that culminates in the proper production of endogenous melatonin, the melatonin your body produces on its own. This means that when you eat peanuts a few hours before bedtime, you are not just providing energy. You are activating 3 distinct pathways that contribute to sleep quality and neurological health during sleep. Tell me in the comments, had you already included peanuts in your health routine? I want to know your answer and which state you're commenting from. Dark chocolate is probably the most misunderstood food when it comes to brain health. Everyone talks about flavonoids. Everyone mentions cocoa, antioxidants, and mood enhancement. But nobody talks about what actually happens inside the brain during sleep when these compounds are present, and that is the most important part. High-concentration cocoa, above 70%, contains a class of compounds called epicatechins. These compounds stimulate the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is often called brain fertilizer, but even that description is still superficial. The role of BDNF during sleep is specific and critical. It is the primary regulator of the neuroplasticity process that takes place during REM and deep NREM sleep. Neuroplasticity during sleep means the brain is literally reorganizing neural connections, strengthening the pathways used throughout the day, eliminating obsolete connections, and creating new synapses. It is the process by which an experience from the day becomes a permanent memory. When BDNF is at adequate levels during this process, it acts as a stabilizer, ensuring that new connections form more efficiently and that consolidated memories become more durable. But dark chocolate goes beyond BDNF. It contains significant amounts of magnesium, and magnesium has a very specific function in the context of sleep and memory. It regulates NMDA receptors, which are the glutamate receptors responsible for long-term synaptic potentiation. In simple terms, these receptors are the mechanism by which the brain decides which memories stay and which disappear. Without sufficient magnesium, these receptors become chronically overstimulated, compromising both sleep quality and the ability to form solid memories. There is also another aspect of dark chocolate that almost nobody connects to nighttime brain health: its effect on the gut microbiome. Cocoa is a prebiotic, and the health of the gut-brain axis directly influences the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and GABA. GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter of the central nervous system, and it is essential for the brain to enter and maintain the deep stages of sleep where memory consolidation takes place. Who here was already consuming dark chocolate with more than 70% cocoa as part of a wellness routine? Comment below and tell me your city. Sesame is the most underrated food on this list, and that is exactly why it deserves special attention, because what it does for the brain during sleep is profound and almost completely ignored in most cognitive health content. Sesame is one of the most concentrated sources of sesamin and sesamolin, two lignans that have a very unusual characteristic. They inhibit the degradation of vitamin E in the body. This may sound like a technical detail, but it has a direct implication for brain health. Vitamin E, especially in its tocotrienol form, is the primary fat-soluble antioxidant in brain tissue. It protects the membranes of nerve cells against oxidative damage, and during sleep, when brain metabolism is highly active in carrying out neuronal cleaning and repair, the production of free radicals also increases. Keeping vitamin E functional during this period provides direct protection against accumulated neurological wear and tear, but sesamin does something even more specific that few people know about. It inhibits an enzyme called delta-5 desaturase, which controls the balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in the body. When this balance favors omega-3s, the production of anti-inflammatory compounds in the brain increases, and chronic low-grade brain inflammation is one of the main mechanisms behind the gradual memory decline that often develops long before any noticeable symptoms appear. Sesame is also an exceptional source of calcium and zinc. Zinc, in particular, plays a direct role in the release of neurotransmitters at the synapses of the hippocampus, the central brain region responsible for memory formation. Zinc acts as a modulator of synaptic transmission, and its presence in adequate amounts during sleep is associated with better consolidation of episodic memories, which are memories of daily experiences and events. There is also sesaminol, a compound formed during sesame processing that crosses the blood-brain barrier relatively easily. Recent research has investigated its ability to modulate the activity of microglial cells, which are the brain's immune cells responsible for monitoring and removing cellular debris during sleep. When microglia function in a balanced way, the glymphatic cleaning process becomes more efficient, and the brain wakes up cleaner, lighter, and sharper. Comment below. Do you consume sesame regularly? And where are you watching this video from? Tell me in the comments. And now we come to walnuts. And here I need to begin with a point that almost nobody talks about: the shape of the food itself. When you look at a walnut, what do you see? Two connected hemispheres, folds and grooves that resemble the anatomy of the brain. This is not an evolutionary coincidence. From the perspective of ethnobotany and traditional medicine across many cultures, walnuts have been used specifically for cognitive health for thousands of years. And now science is uncovering the precise mechanisms behind why this works. Walnuts are the only tree nut that contains a meaningful amount of ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, which is a long-chain omega-3 fatty acid. The body converts part of this ALA into EPA and DHA, the very long-chain omega-3 fats that are directly incorporated into neuronal membranes. DHA represents approximately 40% of the polyunsaturated fatty acids in the brain, and its adequate presence in neuronal membranes determines the fluidity and efficiency of signal transmission between neurons during all cognitive processes, including memory consolidation during sleep. But what sets walnuts apart from other omega-3 sources is their complete polyphenol profile. Walnuts contain L-gitannins that, when metabolized by the gut microbiota, produce compounds called urolithins. And urolithins have an effect that wellness science is studying with growing interest. They stimulate mitophagy, the process by which the body removes dysfunctional mitochondria from cells. In brain tissue, healthy mitochondria are essential for providing neurons with enough energy to carry out repair and consolidation processes during sleep. When damaged mitochondria accumulate inside neurons, the energy capacity of these cells declines, and the brain's nighttime maintenance processes become compromised. Walnuts are also rich in melatonin in its bioavailable form. This is different from the tryptophan I mentioned in peanuts. In peanuts, you have the precursor. In walnuts, you have melatonin itself in a form that the body can absorb directly. But here is the interesting part. The melatonin in walnuts does not act only as a sleep regulator. It also has a direct antioxidant effect in brain tissue, especially within neuronal mitochondria, where oxidative stress during nighttime metabolism is most intense. And finally, selenium. Walnuts are one of the richest dietary sources of selenium available. A single small nut can provide more than 100% of the daily requirement. Selenium is an essential cofactor for glutathione peroxidase, the primary antioxidant enzyme of the central nervous system. Without selenium, this enzyme cannot function, and without it, the brain becomes vulnerable to accumulated oxidative damage, which over time manifests as gradual memory decline, difficulty concentrating, and the sensation commonly described as brain fog. Now you are probably wondering, do I need to eat all 4 foods at the same time? And the answer is no. But understanding how they complement each other changes the way you look at your wellness routine. Peanuts and walnuts provide the fats and neurotransmitter precursors the brain needs to enter deep sleep with the proper metabolic foundation. Dark chocolate enhances neuroplasticity and supplies the magnesium that regulates the receptors responsible for memory formation. Sesame protects brain tissue during the process and helps ensure that anti-inflammatory mechanisms remain active while repair is taking place. And walnuts provide the structural support: omega-3s for neuronal membranes, melatonin for deeper sleep, and selenium to protect the enzymes that keep the brain functioning throughout the entire process. These are 4 distinct mechanisms, 4 different points of support for a single process, maintaining cognitive health while you sleep. And what I find most remarkable about all of this is its accessibility. These foods are not exotic, they are not expensive. They do not require a prescription, a complex protocol, or a rigid routine. You can find them in virtually any grocery store, in any city. If you've made it this far, you already have a perspective on brain health that most people will never have. Not because this knowledge is hidden, but because it requires a willingness to go beyond conventional thinking, to understand the body from a functional perspective rather than simply focusing on symptoms. What I want you to take away from this video is not a list. It is a perspective. Sleep is not an interval between days. It is the most active period of maintenance for your nervous system. And what you provide your body before bedtime determines the quality of that maintenance process. It affects your memory. It affects your reasoning. It affects your mental clarity. It affects how you will age cognitively. Now do me a favor in the comments. First, tell me what city and state you're watching from. This video is reaching places I'd love to know about. Second, tell me which of these 4 foods you already consume and which one you're going to start including. This exchange in the comments has real value because it shows me what truly matters to you. and it helps guide the content I bring in future videos. If you found this content useful, you know what to do. Share it with someone who struggles with poor memory, poor sleep, or brain fog. Sometimes the right information arrives at exactly the right moment, and you could be the person who makes that happen for someone you care about. Take care of your health. Take care of your sleep.